It's time for a big one. When it comes to high-level competitive Mortal Kombat, it doesn't get more powerful across the board than Kabal. This character is unbelievable, and in many titles is either the best character outright, or is right up there in the top 5 discussion anyway. There's a case to be made for a few characters who one might consider the overall best if we look at consistent high placements in various tier lists. But in the case of Kabal, it is the sheer consistency paired with just how many games he's been in that allows this character to take the undisputed number 1 spot. In my opinion, anyway. But as always in a series like this, we're going to dive into each official title and talk about why that was the case. From the 90s all the way to now, this character has been a dominant force in tournament-level play. And this is the competitive history of the extremely broken, but wonderful, Kabal. Starting off with vanilla MK3 is important in this video because Kabal was actually quite different. The stuff he originally had might not sound like much, but it was enough to make his experience different to that of Ultimate MK3, with this game being Kabal's first official appearance. Now, I don't want to get too heavy on the meta in this one, as it really was Ultimate MK3 that cemented Kabal's power in a competitive sense. And this game, across the board, is usually considered a almost unfinished version of what Ultimate MK3 would eventually become. And by that I mean no disrespect, it's just that there was a lot more stuff here that would be removed or changed that made Ultimate MK3 a more complete experience. Kabal's moveset is really simple. He has a gas blast projectile that can be done grounded or in the air, and it is the air version that allows Kabal to be so scary, of which I'll cover in a moment. A low buzzsaw attack that saw more use in vanilla MK3 for sure, and the now famous Nomad Dash, a lightning-fast dash attack that stuns the opponent for a full combo. Kabal features a selection of dangerous dialer combos. The main ones that you'll use will result in the opponent being launched into the air, and he even has a combo that simply knocks down and does okay damage for what it is. This combo string may look useless compared to a launcher, but these kind of combos work better in the corner, so you can get extra damage and keep the aggressive momentum. Launches in the corner will often push you back, which you don't want, especially in this game. The stuff I want to cover in vanilla MK3 is what he could do in this version exclusively. There's a couple of key components here that made him a little bit better in the immediate damage department, and they are as follows. First of all, just basic damage. His 5-hit dialer combo into a launcher jump kick gas blast, which was a very common B&B, did 40% in vanilla, which would be lowered to 30% in Ultimate. The big one about Kabal here is the buzzsaw of all things. It was a lot better in this version. The big thing being that buzzsaw after a Nomad Dash would actually work. Put these two together and hit a dialer combo after buzzsaw, and you get very scary combo damage. But this was computer opponent only. A human opponent can block after the buzzsaw, so the combo doesn't exist. But it did make arcade ladders a ton easier. Now, what wasn't computer only was if you use the buzzsaw after a spin if the opponent is airborne. If you jump kick dash, for instance, a well-timed buzzsaw will keep them juggled and allow for really good damage by itself. We're talking just shy of 50% just because you hit a jump kick, and if you manage to get 2 high punches into a jump kick gas blast, it's about 70%. Vanilla MK3 didn't have jump-in combos, so any extra damage for other hits are a strong tool to have. Now, Kabal is absolutely top tier in vanilla Mortal Kombat 3. But because Unmasked Sub-Zero has access to almost limitless 100% combos thanks to a way more varied ice clone, Kabal didn't actually have the number 1 spot, he was simply just behind it. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is the first game we cover that really dives into the early roots of the character's dominance, as although Kabal was technically nerfed in this game from vanilla, Kabal can still do everything pretty much perfectly, and can capitalize on the new mechanics much better than most. So yeah, in some ways Kabal was weaker than vanilla, but with the new stuff that Ultimate MK3 allows, Kabal shines in many more ways than other characters regardless. Ultimate MK3 introduced a relaunch mechanic. because now you can get a dialer combo from a jump-in punch or a neutral jump kick. This wasn't possible in vanilla, but because Kabal has a consistently good launcher from some of his combos, the ability to relaunch an opponent by jumping in and timing a well-placed jump attack after a launch means that the combo damage is devastating against characters with a large enough hurt box. Characters like Shiva and the Cyborgs will often be the ones that experience that the most. And it's a path to much higher damage than originally intended. Now, whether or not relaunch was intentional is kind of irrelevant here, as it is a major part of the game for characters that can pull it off, and Kabal is definitely one of those characters. A change to Kabal in this version is that his low buzzsaw attack will no longer come out after a spin, or at least in the ways that you would use buzzsaw for a combo or setup potential. It's actually considered a useless move in Ultimate. Its slow startup and slow movement speed, paired with just how unlikely it is to hit anyone, makes it something that doesn't really fit into his toolkit anymore. But truthfully, that doesn't matter, because his toolkit is still pretty much perfect without it, so there's no major loss there. The thing to dive into here is just how well Kabal plays the meta of this game, because he is in many ways a perfect character. And that's not even the last time you'll hear that in this video. Kabal has really good jabs, whether it's high punch or low punch. His low punch is great for that classic run jab game, and his throw is one of the better ones too. It keeps them point blank to continue that run jab pressure. His kick-starting dialer combo leads to a full combo, so if you think someone's going to try and interrupt your jabs, you have this full combo tool in your back pocket ready to go if you make the read. Nomad Dash is right up there for discussion over best special in the whole game. It is so fast that it can punish things, it can whiff punish things, convert into combos if the situation is right. It can even act as a reversal or a wake-up attack in a game that isn't really supposed to have those things. The sheer threat of this move will make players second-guess offense or pressure, because his reward being a full combo, and especially momentum back in his favor, is a massive thing to be scared of. Not only that, but his instant air gas blasts straight up remove many members of the cast without a clean option to get in. They hit ludicrously low to the ground, and you can genuinely just fire these out over and over again. Not to mention, Kabal moves backwards to perform this move, so he's creating space to zone you out automatically. There are characters in this game who can't even touch Kabal in a matchup sense because of the zoning alone, and that doesn't even factor in his pressure or other strong tools. Now, a perfect character in a fighting game is one that has a strong tool for every situation, one that creates no obvious weaknesses if you're looking at matchups. Now, when you look at Kabal in this game, it is hard to think of something that he doesn't do extremely well, and better than most of the cast, in a game that has other characters that are also incredibly powerful in their own right, which leads me to my final point. There is this discussion in Ultimate MK3, one that I think is always going to be around, over which character is better, Kabal or Human Smoke, and I think that's a totally fair discussion. Human Smoke has arguably better mobility thanks to a teleport and even general walk speed. Human Smoke's combo damage that you can just use without having to relaunch is also much higher. They both have a stun attack, a good launcher from a dialer combo, so people are understandably always going to make the comparison over these two characters. The thing about Kabal though is his zoning. He does everything amazingly well, but it's the fact that he has the best zoning in the game too, means that the matchups where characters can't even get in is so over the top that he's kind of the only character that will make many others obsolete. They're both the undisputed top two of the game, make no mistake, but Kabal's sheer dominance in tournament, exhibitions, and even general matchups makes it very hard to suggest anything other than Kabal being the #1 character in Ultimate MK3. In the older titles, it would actually be a considerable amount of time until Kabal was seen again. He wasn't present in MK4 or Gold, he missed out on Deadly Alliance, but it would be MK Deception that marked the return of this character, and in a way that, in one of these games, has Kabal see his lowest overall performance compared to every other game. Which still isn't saying much, because even in 3D Mortal Kombat, Kabal is a really good character that is more than capable. some might say, still kinda cheap, he's able to take advantage of the broken deception mechanics quite well, and that is always a good thing. MK Deception is a 3D title, which meant that you had the 2 hand-to-hand stances and a weapon stance coupled with returning special moves. Sunbin is the first hand-to-hand with some standout buttons that Kabal was able to use. Standing 4 grants a free throw due to its plus frames, and in Deception, it is common for attacks that are plus on hit grounded to give a free throw to cash out damage, but you can also use these plus frames to enforce a mix-up if you have any, and this is something that your 1-3 or 1 back 3 strings can take advantage of, as 1-3 is a mid-ender and 1 back 3 is a low-ender, with the mid launching for a full combo. Down 3 is a really good low poke, and the main launcher in this stance is up 3. It's safe and it's pretty fast for what it is. It is also an avenue for really high combo damage that I'm going to cover in a second. Goju Ryu doesn't have as much by itself, however it is a great stance to use mid-combo for specific branches the game gives you, mostly tied to 1-1 stance change. Hook swords are the standout stance here because they are an avenue to immense damage, pretty okay range, and it goes hand in hand with his Nomad dash, which again I'll cover in a second. Standing 4 gives a free throw, similar to how Sunbin works. Up 3 is a low that has a built-in sidestep, and he's got all kinds of neat little buttons on top of that. Up 2 for a low, back 1 for a high damage knockdown, back 2 for a pop-up, 1-1-4 or 1-1 back 1, and interestingly, really good movement with hook swords as well. Forward movement speed is incredibly high, and one of your 2 sidestep directions if you step block sees Kabal kind of gliding around the screen. Kabal has his Gas Blast, which is grounded only here, and it's kind of your generic 3D MK projectile. There's nothing much else to say there. Nomad Dash is super fast once again, but still not as fast as the classic games. It stuns for a combo and can be used in a combo if the first hit is a single launcher. It's an amazing whiff punisher, and his best special move due to utility alone. His final special move is this really strange looking bounce move. I don't know what to call it, but it can be used for a long range combo ender, so I guess it's good for something, even if it looks kind of stupid. MK Deception Kabal has a lot of stuff that's rather cheap. Firstly, his combo damage. It's really good. Basically, Hook Swords 1-1-4 against an opponent that's nice and airborne will keep them juggled high enough to get more damage in the combo still. Whether it's a rapid stance change into the Goju Ryu branch, or just another weapon 1-1-4. Now, none of this is easy to pull off, but with practice grants very high damage. If you have fantastic execution, you can even bag damage that's in the 80% and beyond realm. But combo damage in the traditional sense is only one element of Kabal's combo game. You see, Deception has OTGs, that's short for off the ground. Basically, a brief moment when an opponent is getting up in the right situation leaves them vulnerable to get hit by something. Now, it's really strange, and it often doesn't even look real, as the opponent is genuinely just standing up and getting hit, but you'll know that you've hit an OTG if the damage of the combo starts scaling a ton. Kabal's 1-3 in Sunbin is your go-to OTG option. 1-3 into itself will actually loop against the wall, and again, you'll know that it works if the combo scales like crazy. But mid-screen, Kabal can use the knockdown from 1-3 to land a free Nomad Dash. This one is tricky to time, but the OTG Nomad Dash gives you 2 combos at least for the price of 1. Just hit a basic launch into 1-3 first, OTG them with dash, launch into your prolonged weapon 1-1-4 loops, and Kabal gets the kind of damage that nightmares are made of. Thankfully, Deception does have combo breakers, but if you're having to save your breakers for the huge damage, you're not going to want to use them on the various ways that Kabal can get a free throw and stuff, which makes his threat all that more apparent. The mixture of decent buttons, really high combo damage, utility thanks to weapon movement and Nomad Dash, the mix-up potential, the fact that he's not that unsafe, especially compared to some of the other characters, leaves Kabal in a situation where he's genuinely scary. He's not the kind of character that people scream about in Deception, but if you go and check Deception tier lists, even a long time ago, he's always kicking around in the top 10. And for good reason. He's not the best ever, but he can definitely throw down with almost anyone thanks to the tools that he sports. With Mortal Kombat Armageddon, there isn't a huge amount to cover, as Kabal retains his Sunbin hand-to-hand and his hook swords. But there are a few changes here that will make Kabal different enough to mention as a separate game. Mostly, his access to stuff that was on the broken side. Armageddon removed OTGs, so the 1-3 stuff I mentioned earlier doesn't work here. Backdash cancelling, a technique where you can backdash after certain moves to shave off recovery frames, is also gone, making a lot more attacks in Armageddon a lot more unsafe. The one major factor for Kabal in Armageddon is that the properties of his hook sword standing 4 has been drastically changed. It will now cause a knockdown on the second hit regardless of the situation. If it hits by itself, it knocks down. If every other hit in 1-1-4 connects, it still knocks down. This hurts Kabal significantly both grounded and in combos, as the standing 4 grounded used to keep standing for either a free throw or a mid/low mix-up. In combos, however, it is totally different, as the knockdown ends things outright. Now, you can somewhat do a similar combo in Armageddon to Deception, however, it is a lot more strict and it isn't as powerful. Plus, it's much harder to time, as only the first hit of the 4 input can keep the opponent juggled and not knocked down. Standing 4 can still be used as a mid option, but thanks to the knockdown, it's not as immediately threatening as it is in Deception. You now have to resort to some other attacks and hook swords, like the back 1 or the back 3, to keep your offense a little more varied. The funny thing here is that Kabal's hook swords from Deception actually exist in Armageddon. They've just been given to Movado instead. It is the main thing that, of all games, keeps Kabal outside of the top 10 in a Mortal Kombat game for once. If he had his own hook swords, which would have kept the comboable 1-1-4 and the standing properties of the standing 4 on hit, Kabal would have been much better. But he's kind of a diluted version of his Deception self. In this one, Kabal is for the one and only time average. And here we go. One of the most notorious entries, and a game where he is absolutely 1000% the best character for a multitude of reasons. Mortal Kombat 9. Interestingly, a game where Kabal was relatively overlooked for roughly the first year of competition, meaning the character slipped by a fair few patches and remained in perfect form by the time patches were finished. Special move-wise, Kabal has been given everything back. Gas Blast and Air Gas Blast work like they do in MK3, meaning Kabal is able to completely fire off the instant air version and get the same effect he had in his very first appearance. Enhanced will fire a better version of this, but truthfully, it's not an enhanced move that Kabal uses all that much. Low Buzzsaw returns and is a low option pretty much anywhere you want. Plus, the Buzzsaw starts up at basically 0 frames. Seriously, the moment you've pressed the button for the move, the Buzzsaw appears, which can be extremely annoying when trying to pressure him or look for something to react to. Enhanced will send out 2 Buzzsaws, which essentially doubles just how annoying it is. Kabal gains a overhead strike special, which is often used in pressure or at the end of strings. It's often used hand in hand with the low buzzsaw, as it's something that is always keeping opponents on their toes. Finally, Nomad Dash returns and is extremely fast as always, stunning the opponent and opening up for a full combo. The big thing about Nomad Dash in this game, well, there are 2 big things, the first of which being that the Nomad Dash startup can be cancelled, which is what results in that overwhelming Nomad Dash cancel pressure that you've likely seen on the internet by now. Secondly, the Enhanced Dash is armoured on startup. Now, this is commonly used to power through projectiles and stuff on reaction, but as I'll cover shortly, this had other, more devastating applications as well. Strings and buttons are another factor because once again, Kabal has it all. Besides having decent pokes to begin with, like the down 1, down 3, down 4, etc., it's the access to strong mids, hit-confirmable strings, and varied combo potential that completes the overall package. Forward 4 is a fast mid, devastating when combined with his Nomad Dash, which you can either combo into outright or cancel on block for more pressure. Back 1-2-1 is a launcher that loops a fair amount in the corner for combo damage, but when combined with Forward 4 is amazing, because Forward 4 also restands the opponent, removing the wake-up attack threat. This is a huge one because taking wake-up options away in this game is a vital option, because it simply limits what your opponent can do defensively. Forward 3-2 is one of the more iconic strings as it's really hit confirmable, and when paired with Nomad Dash Cancel is a scary rushdown option. 1-1-1 and 1-1 back 4 are both again hit confirmable, but can go with Nomad Dash Cancel for the same stuff the other strings allow. My point is, he has a lot of strings that work so perfectly with his Nomad Dash confirms that any time a button connects on hit or block, you're going to be worried about what comes next, because it's either combo damage or dash cancel plus frames, which in MK9 is great because the chip damage on block is absolutely ridiculous. Kabal's toolkit allows for some extreme similarities to his Ultimate MK3 version, which does make sense, as with MK9 being a reboot to the franchise, retaining classic gameplay was very clearly a design direction they wanted to take here. It did mean, however, that Kabal was just as overwhelming here as he was in his very first appearance. The rushdown is what most people are familiar with. Amazing Kabal players were straight up terrifying to fight against because his rushdown was some of the absolute most reliable in the entire game. That's saying a lot with characters like Sonya on the roster, but rushdown was simply one element of the character. His defense was also something that he did perfectly, as his armored Nomad Dash was a constant threat, not just because it's an armored stun, but because of what it allows at a higher level of play. You see, the Nomad Dash startup is where the armor comes from, but the enhanced version can still be cancelled out of. What this means, and what was discovered, is that if you absorb a hit using the armor and then cancel the dash before it starts, Kabal is back in a normal state while the opponent is still recovering from their attack, granting a uninterrupted full combo, instead of something smaller as the stun came first. This technique was coined by the community as a flash parry, and Kabal wasn't the only character who could use this in MK9, but was definitely the strongest with it. This term was so well liked by the overall scene that in Mortal Kombat 11, Kabal's parry ability is called, you guessed it, flash parry. Gas blasts in MK9 were just totally unfair. Most specifically, instant air gas blasts. It had the exact same strength they had in MK3, but in this case he could just do a little bit more with them. The most immediate application to these was that Kabal would outzone an absolute ton of the cast. Gas Blast had seemingly no limit and could be done so low to the ground, paired with the fact that Kabal moves backwards to fire the air version, means that a lot of characters struggled so much to close in space to start even playing the game. Now, to be fair, MK9 had more options for this compared to MK3 Kabal. MK9 did allow you to slowly walk your way in, crouching the projectiles, but all the while Kabal is gaining meter from the projectiles that he's firing at you. Meter which builds into either a combo breaker when you finally catch him, or meter he could spend on armored Nomad Dash, which means that he probably has more defensive options than you do when you finally get in close. The thing that made Kabal the absolute best character in MK9 is that this combination of godlike zoning, godlike rushdown, and godlike neutral made it so that Kabal did not have a single losing matchup in the entire game. He straight up destroyed most of the cast, and the ones that he didn't effortlessly crush in a matchup were either still slightly in his favor or an even matchup at worst. Not that an even matchup versus Kabal was something that happened often, we're talking a tiny amount of characters here. Because in MK9 stage sizes could be drastically different, it was common for a player to choose the stage that helped their character the most, especially if they were a game down. Zoning players would pick a stage like Rooftop Day, as it is the largest by far. rushdown players might pick the pit because it's absolutely tiny. So there were matchups where a character who was strong would really not want to play on a certain stage. Maybe Johnny Cage didn't want to fight on the big stages because the corner is his best friend. Kenshi might not want a small stage because it's less room to move around and zone. Kabal was so perfectly well-rounded that he didn't give a damn what stage he was on. He could go on a stage like Rooftop Day versus a character he can zone out, but he didn't need that, because even if someone closed that gap, he could rush them down, he can brawl, he can destroy. A small thing that might help a matchup is the correct stage, at the very least, and Kabal didn't get affected by the stage at all. It was just an extra advantage that he really didn't need. Now, what's really strange about Kabal in MK9 is that it took him much longer than you'd think to be discovered at this level. It was when we started to see players like Rio dedicate to the character and really put the execution to the test. The knowledge that Rio had of so much competitive MK experience even before MK9, which was kind of rare, that really put Kabal on the map. The unrelenting air gas blasts, the airtight dash cancel pressure, the wild, optimized combos. There was a period where all of the top players in America at the time started to dive into Kabal that made him look like a character that we'd never seen before. And he was a launch character, so that sounds so strange, but players like Detroit Ballin, Rio, Kerbalicious, CD Jr., there was a time where everyone had a top-level Kabal, and it was a totally new experience for a lot of us. If we're talking the most memorable Kabal of MK9 though, Rio takes that spot by a clear mile. You can go back and watch a lot of major events where Rio and his world-class Kabal were a part of so many legendary tournament sets. Go and check them out. Either way, Kabal was the perfect character in MK9, and no one else on the roster will ever top just how dangerous he is. And now, finally, MK11. The game that has pushed Kabal into why I think he is the strongest overall character across all games. A cool little journey for Kabal, and due to versions of the game changing, Kabal went from a solid mid-tier to even upper mid-tier originally, to now being in the discussion for top 5 ever since custom variations hit the market. I'm going to be honest with you, I never know how to tackle MK11 in these videos, as the moves themselves are on such a character-by-character basis, and even in the case of Kabal, where at high level now, we genuinely do only see one variation used by pretty much everyone. So instead, let me take you through the journey this character has faced over the last 4 years, to where we are now, where Kabal is a character that many people fear in competitive level play. In the days of preset variations, before Ultimate, Kabal was not a character that many people were realistically looking at. This was especially apparent when characters only had 2 variations instead of 3, as remember, Variation 3 was added later down the line. Worth noting that in MK11, he doesn't retain much of his original gameplay design. So far so that the gas blasts are entirely removed, replacing his projectiles with the buzzsaws instead. Mean Streak is Variation 1, and it wasn't very popular, besides a few hardcore execution players like Zarakamaka for instance. It replaced Kabal's air buzzsaw, which is usually diagonal, with a horizontal one. You get to throw a low buzzsaw as well, which is pretty neat when combined with the built-in overheads Kabal has, but the big move here was the Nomad Dash Cancel. It was an ability in this game, and to cancel your dash would cost 1 bar of defensive meter. Originally, this variation did give Kabal more single-hit confirms at high level, and was something that players enjoyed using. By that, I mean, usually a single hit can't be hit confirmed because you simply don't have time to see it, right? But doing a single button into Nomad Dash gives you a few extra frames to start the dash, see if it connected, and let the move rock. If they blocked it, you would reactively cancel the dash for pressure. This variation was really hard to use, and it suffered from being incredibly meter dependent. To perform cancels uses defensive bar, and defensive bar is needed for breakaway and wake-up attacks, so you had to be flawless with how you played to actually make this variation work. Clean Cut is Variation 2, and at the time, this was almost the only variation that Kabal players used. It was pretty simple when you compare it to the Kabal of today, but the two main moves were a low hook grab, which once again acted as a low mix-up where overheads were available, and a restand attack that was really weird to punish because it knocked them so far back on block. He had a spin attack as well, but we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist. It was kind of a obvious filler move, and it wasn't that great. Now, a big thing that would make this stand out from Mean Streak is that the original air buzzsaw is a diagonal one, which from a keep away standpoint covers more of an effective area. I don't think any Kabal player was happy to play this variation as it was. It was just a little bit more consistent out of the two variations that players were, frankly, stuck with. This changed a little bit though with the introduction of Variation 3. Variation 3, formerly known as Speed Demon, now known as the Spins, is where things got a little bit better for Kabal in general. He still suffered from some of his universal weaknesses of being zoned out by certain characters and kept at arm's reach, but he had some more moves that let him make certain things more substantial, mostly in the damage department. He gains the hook grab, which is a really good combo tool for the cost of meter, mostly because his 2-3 string now becomes a lot more damaging. A hook spin that can launch on meter burn for combos in the corner or mid-screen, and a gas blast, which is more of a close range strike that restands. Amplify this for safety on block and pushback, on top of creating a lingering cloud that will heal Kabal and damage the opponent, but this only happens if the move doesn't connect. The thing about this variation was, Kabal could just do a little bit more. He has pretty much the same neutral thanks to the universal buzzsaw toss, and he keeps his strings and buttons universally, but he gets a ton more combo damage, pressure and safety because of the gas strike, and the utility of having a self-heal that makes zoning him out not as viable as it once was. The gas blast was a rather frightening checkmate situation, forcing a weak opponent to play with their tournament life just to try and advance, or get around the gas cloud in general. With all of these in play, however, Kabal was still not a character many people were looking at when discussing top-tier material. He may have been bumped up in viability thanks to the third variation being his best one to many players, but at this time, you still had characters like Jackie, Liu Kang, and the Joker, all dominating the space. This took a monumental change with the release of MK11 Ultimate and the ability to finally create your own custom variation. The moment players could craft their specific tournament variation, Kabal completely exploded in popularity. It wasn't an immediate change, as when Ultimate was new, everyone was exploring the cast and trying new combinations. Characters like Sindel, Noob Saibot, Fujin, Robocop, even Scarlet all benefited heavily thanks to making your own variation. But once the community caught on just how wild Kabal could finally be, it was a totally different story. Kabal can now take a variation that keeps the hook grab for combo damage, but add on the air slight gas, which is a air dash of sorts that is the exact same input as Nomad Dash. The moment this move was figured out and refined in its use, Kabal went from a character that most people didn't really bother with, to now one of the scariest characters to fight and one that is seen in many players' top 5s. Although, with any new game, top 5 is always variable from player to player. This move gives Kabal so much mobility, and because he already had really good jump attacks from a regular fast jump 1, a long reaching and cancelable jump 2, and a deep hitting jump kick, all of these work in perfect harmony with Kabal's air dash. Now, an extra factor was that during the game's lifespan, a change was made mechanically, where you could easily option select special moves from a jump in. Simply put, if you do a special input after a jump kick, on block, nothing comes out. On hit, the move will come out. Now, this is something that pretty much every top-level player uses these days, because most characters have at least one special that will simply bag more damage from a jump kick than not doing it. Kabal wins in this case anyway, as his Nomad Dash is one of the best specials for using this option select in the first place. The reason I mentioned air dash being the same input as Nomad Dash means that you can jump attack into air dash for as long as the game allows, and then when you've run out of uses, you can still input the dash from a jump attack, and if it works, you get Nomad Dash anyway. It is an absurd strength to have because now you have two specials for the price of one, able to get easy damage off an already powerful jump game. It's not an exaggeration to say that this variation transformed Kabal completely. It covered weaknesses of being difficult to move in versus some characters. He now has some of the highest damage he can obtain in general, as combos using both of these moves hit like a truck. His pressure is way scarier, as jumping in MK11 is a powerful tool. He is now more complete than he's ever been in the game, and is a character seen regularly in competitive play. I mean, look at the twins from Chile, Scorpion Prox and Nicholas, who spent all of 2022 dominating online and offline major events, with both of them having a powerful Kabal in their roster of characters. It is the inclusion of customs, and this variation specifically, that skyrocketed Kabal in the MK11 tier list. Without it, we may not even say that Kabal is the overall strongest character in Mortal Kombat for 30 years, but thanks to the final version of MK11 putting Kabal back into the top tier runnings, in my opinion, his current legacy is cemented as number one. No matter the generation, no matter the game, except for one, Kabal has always been more than a threat, and in other cases, the best character completely. Not only is Kabal, in my opinion, the strongest character in all of Mortal Kombat, some would say in all of fighting games, because such consistent top-tier placements are not as common as you might think. Now, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.